do that. We also need leadership from her. Oh, that is going to be a foul on Jewel Lloyd, and they're going to take a look at that.
Yeah, that might be upgraded. See, Jewel, as she was fighting over, I think felt that she got hit, but then she just went right in. You'll have a chance to see it on this replay.
Minimum, it'll be a personal foul on Jewel Lloyd, but could be.
What if I told you that the most dramatic game of the WNBA playoffs wasn't decided by a last-second shot or a defensive stand, but by something far more controversial? What if the real opponent the Indiana Fever faced in that win-or-go-home Game 5 wasn't just the Las Vegas Aces, but a force that seemed determined to guide the outcome from the very beginning? The final score might show the Aces moving on, but the real story, the one that has fans and analysts screaming corruption, is about a game that many believe was outright stolen. This isn't just about a loss. This is about a fight through pure chaos, devastating injuries, and a string of officiating decisions that culminated in an entire series being taken away. The question everyone is asking is simple. Were the Indiana Fever victims of one of the most blatant robberies in recent sports history? And what does a fiery reaction from a player like Lexi Hull tell us about a team that simply refused to quit, even when the odds were stacked impossibly against them? Stick around, because the details of this story will change everything you thought you knew about that game.
This game, between the adversity but also the resilience, was just like a microcosm of this whole season. And did that, in a way, like, you're like, oh, we've been here before.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Steph said in the huddle. Like, we're built for this moment. When Kelsey went down, and then we're challenging the call on AB. We've been here before, so it's just so unlucky, so crazy that had to happen.
The feeling that something was off didn't just start in the final minutes of Game 5. To understand the full picture, you have to look at the pattern that emerged from the very beginning of the series. A pattern where every single time the Indiana Fever built crucial momentum, the flow of the game was mysteriously interrupted. It was like clockwork. Indiana would string together a few defensive stops, hit a couple of buckets in transition, and the energy in the building would start to shift. Then, without fail, a whistle would blow, stopping play for a foul so slight it would be ignored in any other context. Aaliyah Boston, the Fever star center, was getting tagged with touch fouls that were unbelievably soft, the kind of minimal contact that happens on virtually every possession in the post. It was as if the officials had a different rule book for her, one where establishing position was a punishable offense.
Ball goes up. Aaliyah Boston.
I don't think that's a foul.
To Indiana, and a late loose ball foul is called against.
Are you joking me?
Meanwhile, at the other end of the court, Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hull were fighting through what looked like straight-up tackles without a single whistle in their favor. Mitchell would drive the lane, get smacked across the arms on her follow-through, and look to the official in disbelief, only to be met with silence. This created an impossible situation for the Fever. They were being penalized for playing physical defense, while being forced to overcome it on offense without any reciprocal calls. By the time the series reached its third game, the frustration wasn't about the Fever's play. It was about how the game was being controlled from the sidelines. Coach Stephanie White was visibly exasperated during her timeouts, trying to devise a game plan for an opponent that seemed to include the three people in striped shirts.
Like, the Indiana Fever fought so hard, but like, they literally had 8 injured players. They had 8 injured players, and Aaliyah Boston fouled out for phantom fouls, and they still got to overtime. Like, you can't deny that. Like, you can't, like, the Indiana, they did everything in their power to try rig that game in regulation, and Indiana.
The free throw numbers started to tell a damning story, heavily leaning toward the Aces. This wasn't just about gifting easy points. It was a calculated shift in energy, making it impossible for Indiana to build any defensive rhythm. Every time they threatened to go on a run, a foul would send an Aces player to the line, halting the game and allowing Vegas to reset their defense. How can you plan a strategy when a legal screen 1 minute becomes an offensive foul the next? This inconsistency became a weapon, and the Fever were on the wrong end of it every single time. It wasn't just bad officiating, it was a corrosive element that ate away at the very foundation of a fair competition.
Boston do this. Just back her way down. Typically, players do not go down when she makes that contact here. Gustafson goes, gets the foul call.
Social media began to erupt after each game, with fans and even neutral observers pointing out the glaring discrepancies. The narrative was no longer about which team was playing better basketball, but about which team was being allowed to play basketball at all. This systemic imbalance set the stage for the ultimate controversy that was about to unfold in the decisive Game 5. But the first 4 games were a slow burn of frustration. Game 5 was an all-out explosion. This was the moment where the subtle bias transformed into what many are calling a full-blown orchestration. Imagine fighting for your entire season, knowing that every single call feels like it's already been written against you. That was a reality for Indiana.
This is some bull crap. They're going to just shove Lexi Hull and then say that's a common foul. Like, this is not unnecessary force. Are you kidding me? If this how this game's going to go, like, I'm sick just watching Lexi Hull.
The arena was electric. The stakes were absolute. And from the opening tip, the Fever played with a desperate, fiery passion. Yet, they seemed to be battling an invisible force. The knockout punches started in the second half. First, Aaliyah Boston was hit with one of the softest moving screen calls you'll ever see. A mere graze that was officiated like a full-force collision. The replay showed barely any contact, but the whistle was instantaneous, sending Boston to the bench with early foul trouble and silencing a burgeoning Fever run. Then, just minutes later, Megan Gustafson took a dramatic flop that was rewarded with another offensive foul on Boston. It was a masterclass in manipulation, and the referees were falling for it every single time.
3 things I didn't like. Look at that. Smacked her arm and her entire body. Honestly, could have been a flagrant foul. Look at this. And she's gonna scream like she got all ball, like she's so excited. Like, anybody could go through somebody's entire body and get a block shot. Like, you should be seeing if she's okay. Gosh dang. And then, why do they hit Howard in the face, but they don't review these and give him technicals like they do on the Fever? And then we all saw that one. They called that a basketball play.
You could see the confusion and despair on the faces of the Fever players. They were being penalized for simply existing in space, while their opponents were being rewarded for theatrics. But the real heartbreak was saved for the most critical moment. With just 26 seconds left on the clock, and the game hanging in the balance, Boston battled for a rebound with Jackie Young. It was a routine box out, 2 all-stars fighting for position. The whistle blew, a deafening sound. Foul on Boston, her 6th and final foul.
15. Lob it in, Boston. So effective in Game 4. Trying to work Wilson on the follow. It's 3. Around and off. Howard trying to tip it. Able to scrape it away. Another extra possession for Indiana. Mitchell, that space didn't take. Boston late.
The arena fell into a stunned hush, followed by a roar of protest from the Fever faithful. You could read the sheer disbelief on Boston's face as she realized her season was over, not because of mistakes she made, but because of a judgment call that felt profoundly wrong. The Fever, desperate for a lifeline, challenged the call. For a moment, there was hope that technology and reason would prevail. The slow-motion replay showed nothing more than 2 players jostling for a rebound, a play that happens 100 times a game without a whistle. But in a moment that confirmed every suspicion, the call stood. Boston was gone, and Las Vegas was handed the free throws that would ultimately force Indiana to finish the game without their most important interior presence.
Here's Sims. Weaving. Hull dishing. Boston lays.
It was a decision that didn't just change the possession. It felt like it changed the destiny of the entire series. And where was Kelsey Mitchell during all of this? She was already gone. The Fever's offensive engine had been absolutely pummeled all night long. Defenders draped all over her, arms hacking on her drives, hips checking her on cuts, all without the reward of a foul call. It was a brutal, punishing style of defense that the officials seemed to have deemed legal for this game, and only for one team.
Can't hit the mid-range. Mitchell pursues the board. Another chance for Indiana. That's been a theme in the early going. Mitchell a 3 is good. More second chance point.
Right around the rim.
Mitchell an open look. She got it from 3.
Mitchell, a warrior, kept attacking, believing that eventually her perseverance would be rewarded with a whistle. But that whistle never came. Her body, pushed beyond its limits by the constant, unpenalized assault, finally gave out in the third quarter. After hitting a clutch 3-pointer that cut into the Aces' lead, she collapsed grabbing her leg in agony. The cramps were so severe she had to be helped off the court, unable to put weight on her own leg, and was later sent to the hospital. She had already dropped 15 points and was a heart of the offense, but a constant, unpunished physicality proved too much. It was a devastating sight, the team's leading scorer being carried out because the very rules designed to protect players were not being enforced.
Defense!
Lob it in, Howard. Out to Hull. 6 to shoot. Hull banks it in.
Meanwhile, other ugly moments were simply ignored, adding to the sense of a one-sided affair. Jewel Lloyd shoved Lexi Hull with such unnecessary force that fans were certain it would be reviewed for flagrant. The broadcasters even speculated on air, noting the excessive nature of the contact. Nothing was called. Natasha Howard took clear contact to the face on a drive to the basket. Silence from the officials. Odyssey Sims absorbed hit after hit on her drives. And somehow she was often treated as the instigator, the beneficiary of a no-call one moment and an offensive foul the next. The official numbers from that night are staggering, and they tell the story plain as day. 25 personal fouls called on the Fever. The Aces, on the other hand, live at the free throw line, attempting a lopsided number of free throws. Aya Wilson alone took 10 free throws. Aaliyah Boston, battling in the paint every possession against double teams, was awarded only 2. This wasn't a competition between two teams anymore. It was a fight between one team and a whistle, a battle against an unpredictable and seemingly biased application of the rules that left the Fever fighting with one hand tied behind their back.
I think that's something we can take away from this season. Obviously, ending on the loss is hard and not what you want, but I do think that we can be proud of the effort we put out there, especially in the fourth quarter, losing Aaliyah, losing Kelsey. I don't even know if that was the third or fourth quarter. But 2 of our biggest stars go down and we continue to fight and send it to overtime. So I think that's, we're proud of ourselves. We're proud of that fight. And it's just...
The physical cost was evident, but the psychological toll of such an uneven playing field was immeasurable. But here's where this story takes an incredible turn. This isn't just a tale of victimhood. What happened next defined the Indiana Fever far more than any questionable call ever could. This became a showcase of pure, unadulterated heart, down their star center, down their leading scorer, and facing an opponent that seemed to have every advantage. The Fever absolutely refused to die. It was in these moments of absolute desperation that you saw the true character of this team. On the bench, players who were exhausted and injured were on their feet, screaming encouragement, their voices becoming the lifeblood for the 5 on the court.
On Las Vegas run. They have their largest lead of the quarter. Boston finds Turner. Turner didn't want to shoot it. Petty will, and knock it down. The stats have not been gaudy, but the decision-making has been excellent tonight from Greg.
Yes.
Petty, they need it. They've got it.
Coach Stephanie White drew up plays for a roster that was being held together by tape and sheer will, and every player who stepped onto that floor bought in completely. They weren't just playing for a championship anymore. They were playing for each other, for the pride of a franchise that had been counted out all season long. This was the next man up mentality pushed to its absolute extreme, and the response was nothing short of breathtaking. And the person who stepped into the void was the most unlikely hero imaginable. Odyssey Sims, a player signed late in the year on a hardship contract, turned into an absolute superstar. With the season hanging by a thread, she transformed into an unstoppable force. She erupted for 27 points, shooting 50% from the field and dishing out 6 assists. But the numbers only tell half the story. It was how that left everyone in awe. With Kelsey Mitchell out, the Aces defense keyed in on her, yet Sims was unshakable. She navigated double teams with veterans' poise, used her strength to finish through contact that was still going uncalled, and hit pull-up jumpers that silenced a hostile crowd. Her clutch layup late in regulation, driving into a force of defenders to tie the game, was the stuff of legend. It sent a shockwave of belief through her team and forced overtime against all possible odds.
Hey, it's sad. I think, especially when you push a game to overtime and you fight for so long, your expectations are to win, obviously. And so to lose is sad, but I think arm in arm, all of us together. We can look at each other and be proud of each other. So it was a moment of love for sure.
She wasn't just playing a game. She was embodying the grit and fearlessness of a team that would not be broken. This collective spirit was contagious. Lexi Hull, battling her own back injury, became a defensive menace, creating turnovers that led to critical fast break opportunities. Her willingness to sacrifice her body for a loose ball ignited the entire bench. Shea Petty, thrust into a larger role, didn't hesitate, firing from deep with confidence that belied the high-pressure situation. Each player, from the stars to the role players, understood the assignment: leave everything on the floor. They were a band of survivors, and their unity in the face of such adversity forged a bond that transcends a single game. This wasn't a collapse. It was a defiant stand. While the final outcome in overtime didn't go their way, the message was sent. The Indiana Fever had the heart of a champion, and that is something no official's whistle can ever take away from them. They were supported by a roster giving every ounce of itself. This was not a one-woman show. It was a symphony of sacrifice. Lexi Hull, playing through a significant back injury that would have sidelined most players, was the embodiment of this toughness. Her 12 points, 7 rebounds, and relentless defense were only the visible metrics. What the stat sheet couldn't capture was the sheer force of what it took for her to stay on the floor. Every closeout on a shooter, every box out against a bigger opponent, was a battle against her own physical limitations. She became a defensive quarterback, calling out sets and directing traffic while fighting through pain. Her willingness to speak up after the game, to demand accountability, showed a leadership that transcends the stat sheet. It was the voice of a player who had left everything she had on the court and knew her teammates had done the same. A voice that refused to let their effort be forgotten or dismissed. And when the offense needed a jolt, another unlikely hero answered the call. Shea Petty came off the bench not just to play minutes, but to change the game. Her 3 crucial three-pointers were like oxygen for a team struggling to breathe. Each one came at a moment when the Aces were threatening to pull away, when the deficit felt insurmountable. The first stopped a 6-0 Vegas run. The second silenced a roaring home crowd that smelled blood in the water. The third, perhaps the most important, brought the Fever within a single possession after Mitchell had gone down. A clear message that they would not roll over. Petty's confidence in those moments provided a spark when the offense could have flatlined, forcing the Aces defense to honor the perimeter and creating driving lanes for Odyssey Sims. The contributions ran even deeper. Veterans on the bench, like Sophie Cunningham, were constantly in the ears of younger players, offering strategic advice and fiery encouragement. The medical staff worked frantically to keep bodies functional, a silent but critical battle behind the scenes. And through it all, even from the bench, Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell had laid the foundation with their early efforts. Boston's dominance in the first half forced the Aces to adjust their entire defensive scheme, while Mitchell's scoring burst kept the Fever afloat during early offensive droughts. Their presence, even while sidelined, was felt. You could see them cheering, wincing with every play, living and dying with each possession. This wasn't a team that lost. This was a team that was forced to surrender only after they had given everything they had. And then some. They were a group of players who, when faced with a perfect storm of adversity, chose to become each other's life rafts. This collective resolve is what made their final push so compelling. They weren't just executing plays. They were operating on instinct and trust. A stolen ball by Hull would lead to a scramble, which would find its way to Petty, who would have the poise to kick it to a cutting Sims. It was beautiful, chaotic, and born entirely from their refusal to be separated from the game they loved. They didn't just push the 2-time champions to the brink. They pushed them to overtime while playing what felt like 5 against 8, defying not just a talented opponent, but a tide of circumstances that was overwhelmingly against them. So, what did Lexi Hull say after this heartbreaking, and many would say, stolen loss? Her words weren't of anger, but of immense pride. She said that in the huddle, after losing their biggest stars, they looked at each other and knew they were built for that moment. She called it a moment of love, where every player could be proud of the fight they showed. That sentiment, that unbreakable bond, is what makes this ending so bitter, but also so powerful. It's the kind of loss that doesn't feel like an end, but rather a beginning, a painful, necessary lesson in exactly how tough you truly are, because this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. Think about what this Fever roster endured this season. 6 season-ending injuries. Their most important player, Caitlin Clark, limited to just 13 games. They had to use hardship contracts just to field a team. And yet, This group, the 6th seed that nobody believed in, beat higher-ranked teams and took a fully loaded dynasty to a decisive Game 5 that went to overtime. Let that sink in. Now, imagine that same team with that same heart and resilience getting a fully healthy Caitlin Clark back next season. Her ability to stretch defenses and create offense is the final piece of the puzzle. Combined with now playoff-tested Aaliyah Boston, a scorching Kelsey Mitchell, and emerging leaders like Lexi Hull and Odyssey Sims, what you're looking at is no longer a promising young team. It is the foundation of a future dynasty. The playoffs of this year weren't a finale for the Indiana Fever. They were a brutal, painful, but ultimately defining preview. They were robbed of a finals appearance. There's no doubt about it. But what they gained was far more valuable, the undeniable proof that they have arrived, and the entire league should be terrified of what comes next. This story is far from over. The conversation about accountability in officiating needs to continue. So let us know down in the comments, what was the most egregious moment for you in that game? Do you believe the outcome was altered by the calls on the court? Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on all notifications so you don't miss our continuing coverage of this incredible team. The Fever's march to redemption starts now, and you're going to want to see every step of the journey.